So welcome everyone to our session today on essential tools for data management using Microsoft Excel. I am very passionate about managing data when it comes to Excel. There are so many built-in features that I swear sometimes we just forget that are there, or we see them on the ribbon and we just don't know the benefits that they have and how easy some of these features can actually use. So when we talk about managing business data effectively, I think it's very essential for reporting, keeping confident decision making at ease. So in this session, we're going to move beyond the basics of Excel and really kind of focus on practical tools that can really help you to stay organized, to be able to analyze your data efficiently. So this is really just kind of put together, designed for anyone that needs to take Excel just a little bit further and to know what to do with large data sets. So we're going to look at different features like Microsoft Tables, filtering, all these hidden view tools that we have. We'll take a look at pivot tables and a little bit on a few different functions along the way as well. So we want to make sure that you get some real world experiences on really kind of being able to use these types of features that you can really be using every single day. I know most of these I use every time I'm in Excel, which of course for me is every day. Whether you're working with sales reports, operational logs, HR records, customer lists, it goes on and on as to the benefits that we have of using these options. So when it comes to the practice file that Matthew was talking about, you will not only have the practice file, but you're also going to have a workbook. So he was going to share a workbook with you that I am actually using today. Let me get that back on my screen. Sorry, I'm having a little issue with my wrist here. So my mouse is not cooperating with trying to click and that kind of thing. I apologize. My mouse is going kind of crazy on me today. But one of the things that I wanted to start with today is how beneficial using Excel tables is. So we have a lot of individual features that we can be using in Excel, but if you put your data into a table, it's going to bring together all of these separate features and give you everything all at once. So you don't have to manually be doing these separate actions. So I'm going to go to this worksheet called orders. And I have all this information that I want to be able to analyze this data. And I want it to be super easy to be able to do that. I want to be able to filter. I want to create formulas. I've got all these different things that I want to do. So I want to turn this into a table. It's going to give you so many benefits. If this is something you have never done, today's your day to get started with them. So one way to do it is make sure you are clicked on a cell within your range of data. Then you're going to go to the Insert tab of the ribbon. On the left-hand side in the tables group, you can click the icon table. It knows your selected range, which, by the way, let me explain that for just a second. It knows your selected range. That's because we started by being clicked on a cell inside the range. And my data source doesn't have any empty rows or empty columns separating the data. So you want to make sure your data is set up correctly for this to work correctly. So no empty columns, no empty rows. Can you have empty cells? Sure. You can have empty cells, that's not an issue, but just not an entire row, entire column, because that's not going to work, okay? So the other thing on this dialog box that I wanted to point out is make sure that that checkbox is checked where it says my table has headers, because what that's going to do is take the top row of your data set, which doesn't need to be row 1. It's just whatever the top row is, it's going to take that top row and have that become the headers. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And what it did first is I'm just going to click on any of the cells. I'm going to click on any cell. First thing that you'll notice is that it automatically formatted the data. If you look at your ribbon, it has a table design tab. a table design tab. And on the right-hand side, you're going to find table styles. This is a gallery of choices that you can use to change the styles that are being used within your table. So notice the headings at the top is different than the rest of the cells, of the rest of the rows, and every other row is different. That's because it's using what is called banded rows, and the heading style is turned on. But if you go to this gallery of choices, there's light, medium, and dark colors that you can use, and you will actually get a live preview as you hesitate. Now, some of these are a little bit too much on colors. I don't use any of the dark. I don't like any of those really dark green ones, but there's some that are very subtle and very nice to use. As a matter of fact, I probably use this one the most. This in the medium category. I like having the banded rows where it makes it much easier to read your information by having every other row look different. Here it's gray shaded, and the color on the header row up at the top is this nice green. But how did all that even happen? Well, we can turn those formatting options on and off. We don't have to keep them the way that they are. If you look at the table design tab on the ribbon, in the table style options group, the checkbox is in front of the header row. If I check it again, it takes it away. Click it again, it brings it back. Also, we have banded rows. If I uncheck that, it takes away the emphasis being different on every other row. Click it again, it brings it back. But if I don't want banded rows, maybe I want banded columns. Banded columns is going to give you every other column will have an emphasis to it, depending on the table style you're using. I don't know if you knew this, but every time you're clicking and unclicking these features in this table style options group, it's actually modifying your table styles. Because if we remove something or use something else, it changes the table styles to match. Like they also have emphasis on the first column and or the last column. Now, if I go back to my table styles and click on this drop down, you can see that the medium categories really show that emphasis with the different colors that are being used. So just so you could see, if I go back and uncheck those, it changes those table styles to match. So that's pretty cool how it automatically updates. Kind of a nice little feature. But if you click on a blank cell outside your range, the table tools on the ribbon disappear. If you click on a cell inside that table, it automatically comes back, just so you know. And another thing about this table, it can be named. If you look at the table design tab, on the left-hand side, it says table name and it says table 1. If you click in that table name box, you can actually type in what you want to name this. So I'm going to name it orders and press enter. Now that table is called orders. And it's an absolute reference because it is a named range. Now, how do we know that? Well, if you've been to any of our previous sessions that we've had, you would have seen that we talk about named ranges all the time. Tables are automatically named. So if I go to the name box, click on the drop down, there's orders. If I click orders, it automatically selects the entire range of cells for that table, not the header row, just the rest of it. Okay, just so you're aware that it does do that. Now, what are some other benefits that you have by turning this into a table? The formatting is absolutely fantastic, but it also has another feature. In this table style options, there's a filter button. That can be turned on and off, and what that allows you to do is to have filters automatically turned on for your table. It comes on by default when you create a table. And if you have large amounts of data, you can scroll down on this list and it freezes row 1. The header row, I should say. It freezes your header row. So it's no longer saying A, B, C, D at the top. It's actually saying the names of each of the columns, which are uniquely identified. So pretty cool that it does all of that. But let me take that just a step further. I'm actually going to insert a new column at the end of the table. And I'm going to go to cell J2. and create a formula. When you have a table and you go to the next adjacent empty cell, create a formula, it's going to copy that formula all the way down for every record of information. Pretty cool that it does that. So let me show you what I mean. I'm going to say equal, I want to take this unit price and multiply it by the quantity. When you do a formula with data in a table, it automatically is giving the names of the fields, which are the headings for each of the columns. So it's easier to understand what it's doing. So basically I'm saying take the unit price multiplied by the quantity. And that's what it says. Now, as soon as I press enter, it's automatically calculated that all the way down that column, and it added the new column to be a part of the table. All we have to do is go to J1, give that column a name. And I'm just going to, and by the way, it's the same as the extended price. So I'm just going to say totals, just to show you that we could do that. So just so you could see how great and how easy this is to use. But a lot of people wonder, how do I expand this table if I'm going to add more rows to it? Because this isn't the end of all the orders that we're going to get. If I look at the very bottom of this, which by the way, I'm doing control down arrow to jump down this total row, that J, column J. But you can see that when you're at the end of a table, there's a little, see where there's this little square at the end? I should say, I'm going to click off that cell so I don't get the little square, but it's actually a little triangle. Let me zoom in on this so you could see this a little bit better here. There's this little triangle, and if you put your mouse on it, it actually gives you a diagonal arrow. So if I know we're going to be doing more rows, I can expand to include more rows by clicking and dragging. So I'm just going to go down to 1,495 or 96 rows. So now I just added all of those rows to this table so that as we come in and do more data entry, it's automatically going to be a part of the table, and any formulas, it's going to automatically update because they copied the formulas down when we expanded that table. So I got to tell you, tables have so many different benefits. Now I'm going to jump back up to the top. So when it comes to using the filters, now, of course, yes, you can turn filters on with any data set. Whatever it is that you want, you can, put filters on. That doesn't matter. But how do you use those filters? Well, let's say that I only want to filter by country. I want to see Canada. That's all I want to see. If I go to the country dropdown, you're going to see a unique list of all the countries. If I uncheck the select all, just click in front of Canada and click OK. It automatically now is just showing the total number of records for Canada. Now, how many total are there? Well, when you look at the row numbers on the left-hand side, they're blue numbers. It's hiding the rows that don't match our criteria. But if you look at your status bar at the bottom left, it tells you that there's 75 out of a total of 1,494 records found. So we know there's 75 orders for companies in Canada. That's an easy way to find that information out. Now, of course, if I want to clear the filter, I can go back to that drop-down arrow for country, click clear filter from country, and it will automatically take it away. But what if while I'm doing all of this, I want to be able to see the grand total of all of the orders and then a subtotal of just the orders I'm actively seeing as I'm filtering and unfiltering? Well, we could actually create a sum of all of those extended prices. I'm going to delete this column that I added, by the way. I'm going to say that I want to have a sum of all of these extended prices. Well, if I know I'm going to be doing more than one formula with that range of data, I'm going to probably want to name those cells. I want to name those cells. So one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of the cells within that extended price, and I could give them a name, but is it already named? Yes, it is. You'll see that in just a second. So I'm going to do a sum of extended prices. So I'm going to do equal sum like you normally would. And then it needs to know, well, what do I want to do a sum of? I'm going to go to I2. I'm going to do Shift Control down arrow to select all the way down. And then I'm going to Control Enter. And it's automatically going to give me a sum of all of the orders worksheet, I should say, and all of the cells in the extended price. So when you look at the actual formula bar, it makes it so much easier to understand what it is that you're getting a sum of. Gives you the name of the worksheet as well as this, or I should say the name of the table, and the name of the cell, the column within that table. So that's pretty cool. But I also want to go to L1. And I want to create a subtotal function. Oops, sorry, wrong cell. I'm going to go to L1. I'm going to do equal. I'm going to do SU. I'm going to double click on subtotal. A subtotal function is different than a sum, although it can do a sum. You can see from the dropdown, it's got hidden code numbers to correspond with different functions. I'm going to double click on 9-sum. Because the number 9 will be entered, letting the computer know that I want to do a subtotal using a sum. If I wanted an average, I would use the number 1, etc. Then I put in a comma, and I need to tell it what are the cells I want to get a subtotal of. I'm going to do that same extended price. So I'm doing the exact same thing, and I'm going to get exactly the same answer. But let me take this just a little bit further, because what if I wanted to find out, I want to only see the orders that have a unit price that is $100 or more dollars, a unit price that has $100 or more dollars. I could go to the unit price, click on the drop down for filter, and each one of the columns has an advanced filter that is based on the data type. So whether it's text, it's dates, it's numbers, etc. If you hesitate on number filters because it knows there's numbers in this column, we have the ability of saying, I want to filter based on what's greater than, less than, equal to, the top 10, whatever your case might be. I'm going to click greater than or equal to, and then in this dialog box, I'm going to say 100. I'm going to click OK, and it filters this list to only show me who had a unit price that was over $100. You can see that the subtotal function on L1 automatically updated. So we can be using this to really take advantage of having the capability of doing these formulas. And as we are filtering, it's easier to say, okay, well, this is the total for what I just filtered by. So much better, so much easier. But all depending on what it is that you need. What is it that you want it to do? Now, I'm going to go back and I'm going to clear my filter. I'm going to clear my filter from this unit price. So both those formulas come back as they were. What if I changed my mind and I said, I don't really want this to be in a table anymore? You can actually, sorry, there goes my hand again. You could actually remove the table. But remember, I applied formatting to this table because when you go to remove a table, you're going to go back to the Table Design tab. On the left-hand side in the Tools group, you could click Convert to Range. When you do that, it says, are you sure you want to convert this table to a normal range? If I click yes, the formatting of this data did not go away. Did not go away. But it also took away, so what that stayed, but it took away the filtering, it took away the freeze panes at the top, it took away all those other essentials. So just so you could see, I'd have to manually apply those, which really isn't that big of a deal. I mean, it's something that you may or may not use. You know, sometimes I don't want a table. Sometimes I want to be able to control things on my own or whatever the case might be. And what if I want to use some different views? Very popular within using navigating and managing large volumes of data. There's things that we can do. Whether you have a lot of worksheets with a lot of ranges of separate data, or you want to freeze the top row, or you want to be able to freeze column A and row 1, whatever your case is, there's different things that we can do. Starting with freezing. These features are all going to be located on the View tab of the ribbon. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to cell B2. I'm going to go to cell B2 because I'm going to tell the computer that I always want to see row 1 when I scroll down. And I always want to see column A when I scroll to the right. So I'm going to click on B2. It will freeze everything above me and everything to the left of me. By going to the window group, I can click Freeze Panes, then click Freeze Panes. If I scroll to the right, column A stays visible. If I scroll down, row 1 stays visible. That is something that I use on a very regular basis. Even if I don't have a table applied, that's something that I use regularly. But also, what if I wanted to be able to see 2 worksheets at one time from the same workbook? Did you know that you could go to the View tab in this window group and you can actually do New Window? New Window opens the same workbook twice. Then on the View tab of the ribbon in the window group, click the Arrange All, and you can choose how you want to arrange them. I'm going to say vertical and click OK. And now I have my workbooks side by side of each other. So if I want to be looking at my references worksheet on one window and my orders on another window, we can do that. And I could go and create a formula, like if I want to say equal this cell multiplied by this cell, and I want to turn that into an absolute. We don't have to worry, and I'm just going to add absolute reference in here by putting my dollar signs in. I'm going to control enter so that I can copy that down. All these changes that I'm making on one side is updating both because it's still one workbook. I'm just seeing it twice. So if I want to do kind of a side by side of different sheets in one workbook, easy way to do it. When you're done, just close one of the sides. Then you can maximize out that other side again to put it back to being full window. There's a lot of great little features on that window group in here. So let me actually go back to that orders worksheet. And let's say that I want to actually be looking at rows 1 through 84, and then I want the other part of my screen to be another scroll where I can scroll up and down on the other orders. I'm clicked right now on cell E84, and I'm going to go to the window group again, and I'm going to click split. It automatically applied a split to the left and above the cell I was actively clicked on. On the right-hand side, I now have 2 scroll bars, one for the top pane of the window, one for the bottom pane of the window. And at the bottom of my screen, I can scroll my left-hand side, left and right. I can scroll my right-hand side, left and right. So depending on what it is that you want to see, you can have a split window to be able to see multiple parts of one workbook at the same time. I can hesitate my mouse in the cross of the vertical and horizontal bars of the split, click and drag and move the split to go wherever I want it to go, and then it's split there. Or I could double click on a line of the split to remove it, because maybe I just want top and bottom split. I could have a top and bottom by removing the vertical line. If I go back to the window group and click the split icon again, it will completely remove it. But if you want to see different parts of your screen at one time, that's going to be a super easy way to do that. One workbook, want to see multiple parts of it. It's just wonderful. It's a great option to use. But also something that I sometimes struggle with in a worksheet like this is, what if every time I click on a cell, I want to be able to understand exactly what cell I'm on? Did you know that on the View tab of the ribbon, there's this feature called Focus Cell? If you click Focus Cell, it emphasizes the column and the row that you are clicked in. It makes it so much easier as you navigate. Notice when I'm moving around from cell to cell, it's actually moving it up, down, left, and right. It's moving that focus cell. So it makes so much easier to be able to manage where you are when you're working on your data. Now, if you want to change the color, you can by going to that focus cell drop-down arrow, hesitate on focus cell color, and you can always use a different color. So if you don't like the color that it provides, you can always go back and change the color. If you decide to turn it back off, just click the icon again. It will automatically take the icon back off again. Okay. So we've got some great features that are available on the View tab to really help you manage your data. Now, there's another one, because what if you happen to have a lot of worksheets? And within those worksheets, you have different sets of data. Did you know that you have a navigation pane? Just like we do in Microsoft Word, Microsoft Teams, Outlook, whatever. If you are on the View tab in the Show group, click the icon Navigation. By default, it opens on the right-hand side of the screen, but if you want to move it to the left, just slide it over to the left-hand side. Because to be honest, that's where I like it, because that's where we normally are using a navigation pane, is on the left. So it's a pretty great option. Now, for some reason, I lost my entries on there. I don't know why they disappeared. But anyway, I'll just reopen it again. Whatever worksheet you want to navigate to, just click on the name of the worksheet. What it's going to do then is indented underneath the name of the worksheet. You can see that I have this lookup A1 through F2. If I click on that, it selects that range of cells. So I have different ranges of cells with data. That's what each of these are. Lookup H1, that's the name of the worksheet and the cell. So on H1, I have this hashtag error. That's why I have that as a separate entry underneath this lookup worksheet. So whichever one of these I click on, it's automatically selecting those ranges of cells. If I want to go to a different worksheet, I click on the name of it, and indented underneath it will be all the ranges of data within that sheet. That to me has been one of my favorite features that they have been added over the past, I think we got it almost a year ago already. Yeah, pretty sure focus cell and navigation came out almost a year ago already. But I got to tell you, I use it every day. That is something that I just absolutely love. I love both the focus cell, and I really like that navigation pane. So we can freeze, we can open the same workbook in new windows. We have so many different options for what it is that we can do. But also you're going to find in your handout that it's going to talk about another feature, which is called the Excel sheet view, an Excel sheet view. If you have a file open that is on a cloud and you shared it with somebody else, and if you have other people in that workbook with you, did you know that if you filter the data, you're filtering it for them also? What if you don't want to? What if you want that filter to just be for yourself, not for the other people that are in that workbook? You can go to Sheet View on the left-hand side, click New, and it can actually, you can see that it says you're in Sheet View. When you're in a sheet view, you won't see other people sorting and filtering, but you'll see everything else. I'm going to say, great, I'm going to continue. So just so that you know, you can actually, it's a temporary view, but if you wanted to save it, you could. But I got to tell you, that's a pretty cool little option that we have there. So right now, notice that my columns and my row numbers are a different color. That's letting you know that you're in that sheet view. So if other people are in this workbook with me, they can do their thing and I can be doing mine. Now, how helpful is that? Oh my goodness, I use that all the time. I didn't, back before we got that feature, I didn't think that having shared workbooks was all that fantastic because they'd be filtering what they wanted to see, and I want to sort it by something else because I'm working on the same sheet, and it just wasn't very helpful. But boy, I got to tell you now, I love it because of this. And in that sheet view group on the ribbon, you can click exit. If you wanted to keep it, you could. If you wanted to give it an actual name, you could name it. But I'm going to say don't keep. If I gave it a name, then I would keep. I would click keep, just so you know. So we've got some pretty cool features on the View tab. And, I got to say that, I've asked people, how often do you ever go to the View tab? They say never. People never go to the View tab. But I got to tell you, I've been using some of these features since Excel was released. Because some of these view options that we have in this window group, they've been around forever. They've been around since Excel was introduced. So just so you know, some of these aren't new features. Some of these are, like some of them that I just demonstrated, but some of these are features that have been around forever. Okay. Now also, I don't know if you knew this, but let me go to the worksheet called References. Did you know that you could actually select a range of data? And then at the bottom right, you get this little icon called Quick Analysis. If you've attended any of the other Excel sessions, I usually will tell you that if an icon all of a sudden appears when you're working in Excel, you need to click on it to see why it's there, because it's there to help you. If you click on this Quick Analysis, look what it can do for you. If you want to apply conditional formatting, you can do that. You also could create a chart based on the range of data that you selected. If you want to add totals like a sum or an average or a count, I want to add a sum to go in row 10. I don't have to create the formula. I can do it right from here. And if you scroll over to the right, if you want a different formula on the right-hand side of your selected range, you can use these icons with the kind of that orangish color on the images. The blue colored ones are for the row below you, just so you know you could do that. Or if you want to turn this into a table, or you want to add spark lines, it can automatically add spark lines in the next cell, the cell next to your selected range. That's something that I really think is pretty cool. I mean, it's amazing what we have built into Excel. And these are the kind of things that I take advantage of almost every day. Because why do I want to manually do anything? I don't. But what if you have some questions on your data? And I'm going to go back to this orders worksheet again. In this orders worksheet, if I have questions on this data, which by the way, I'm just going to close my navigation pane only because it's taking up space on my screen right now. There's a section in your handout that talks about analyzing data. Have a question about your data? Analyze it. Did you know that you have a built-in analysis tool? It's on your home tab of the ribbon. Some people have seen it and took the liberty of clicking on it, but some people see it and they're like, I don't know what that is. I'm not going to click on it. Don't be afraid to click on things. You can't hurt anything. So I'm clicked on a cell within my range of data, and I'm going to go to my home tab of the ribbon on the right-hand side. I'm going to click this icon, Analyze Data. What that does is it selects your range of cells and it says, hey, wait a second. When I look at this range of cells, here's some suggestions of what it is that you could do. It could create a pivot table. It could create a chart. Look at all these different suggestions. So if you need to analyze your data, you don't have to manually do it. Take advantage of what comes up with that analysis tool that is automatically built in. Now, how do you work with it? Let's say that, and by the way, up at the top, it's also got questions about your data. So if I wanted to ask it a question, like what's the percent of total units that come from company name of Chop Suey Chinese? If I click on that, it's going to automatically show me the answer. If I want to insert that as a pivot table with all of the company names, all I have to do is click Insert Pivot Table. It automatically inserts that pivot table on a new sheet. So here it is with all of that information. So this is all the different company names of the unit the sum of unit price for each of those companies. It's giving us this percentage. So it automatically built that pivot table for us. But let me go back and show you another option for this. And I'm just going to close this analyze data one more time here and reopen it, because just so you know, every time that you open it, it gives you the same results. So if I wanted to give me a pivot chart that is going to give me the quantity by salesperson, so how many total products did everybody sell? I could click insert pivot chart. It's going to automatically give you a new sheet with the pivot table and the pivot chart to go along with it. Pretty amazing that we could get that with just a click. So creating pivot tables doesn't have to be brain surgery. It can be done so quickly and so easily. But if it doesn't show you exactly what you're looking for, you could always put it in that analyze data, or you could just simply create your own pivot table. So if I go back to the orders worksheet, click on a cell within my range of data, and let's say that I want to get a report, a pivot table report that's going to give me all of the countries, all of the salespeople, and the totals for the extended price. I can do that so easy just by going to the Insert tab, clicking the icon Pivot Table, clicking OK, and then on the right-hand side, I click in front of the squares for the fields I want to add. Anytime that you have a lot of data, if you want to narrow down what you're seeing, filters can only do so much. What a pivot table does is amazing. In this pivot table field list on the right, I'm going to click in front of country. I'm going to click in front of salesperson. Already it's pretty impressive, because what did it just do? It gave us a unique list, alphabetized, of every single country that has an order. And then indented underneath it is the name of every salesperson that sold something in that country. Now, who did they sell it to? What did they sell? I haven't added that, but I could. But I'm going to click extended price. Anytime that you add a number field to a pivot table, it automatically adds it as a separate column and assumes you want to do a sum. So what did it give us? Well, for Argentina, as an example, there's a total of $8,119.10 worth of products that were sold. But for that country, Janet sold $319.20. So it's doing a subtotal of the country and a subtotal of each salesperson. Can you do that back on the main worksheet? Not like this. This is amazing. And remember when I was doing that formatting back in that table? Did you know that you could do that in a pivot table? If you look at the ribbon, there's a design tab. If you go to the design tab, you're going to get the pivot table styles, because those are the same styles like we have back in the regular table. If I go to the medium category and I click on this green one again, it automatically is going to give me the formatting for that. And look at the pivot table style options. If I want banded rows, I want banded columns, I can do that. But it even gives you additional features that you may not have known. I don't know if you're an Access database person, but if you go over to this report layout, it's automatically using show in compact form. But if you do outline form, it's going to separate the country and the salesperson into different columns. Didn't know you could do that, huh? Pretty cool. If I go back to report layout and I click on show in compact form, it puts it back to the way that it was. Also, for the subtotals, if you don't want subtotals, you could get rid of them. But do you want to have the subtotals at the bottom of the group or the top of the group? If I choose bottom of the group, Argentina's total went underneath the bottom of that group. I personally don't like that, but just so you know, you could. I'm going to go back and say, show the subtotal at the top of the group. And another thing about pivot tables, just to take this a step further, because if you've already been to some of our sessions, we've talked about pivot tables, but we never get to that design tab. And we don't always have time for this next feature that I want to talk about. Did you know that you can add the same field to a pivot table twice? Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to go to the right-hand side where I have my list of my names of my columns, and I'm going to click and drag extended price down to the values box, and it adds the same column twice. I don't want both of them to be the same answer. What I want it to do is actually take column C and have it be averages. I can right-click on any number in column C. I can actually go to this summarize values by. And from there, I can choose count, I can choose average, max, min, product. I'm going to click average. Now I'm getting the average of the extended price. Now, by the way, it has a 2 at the end. I'm going to get rid of that 2 because I can name these whatever I want. If I want to go to A3 and I want to have it say country, oops, sorry, there goes my hand trying to type again, country and salesperson. I can do that just like that. Okay, so just so you could see, a pivot table goes way beyond what we've talked about in previous classes. Okay, but let me take this just a step further. Do you remember when we were in that table a minute ago? I'm going to go to the pivot table analyze tab. On the left-hand side, it has pivot table name. It says pivot table 3 because it's the third one I've created in this workbook. I'm going to name it, and I'm going to call it sales and country and sales, whatever you want to name it, you can name it. If I go to the name box drop down, I'm not going to see the pivot table in that drop down list. Just so you know, you could see it when I had a table, but you can't see a pivot table in that drop down list. But you can name a pivot table. Why would you ever do that? Well, what if you wanted to add a separate pivot table to the same sheet? So I'm going to call this sales and country, and I'm going to go back to the orders worksheet and I want to create another pivot table. So I'm going to go to the insert tab. I'm going to create, oops, sorry. I got to cancel that, sorry. I'm going to go to pivot table again, but I'm going to say existing sheet. Then I'm going to go to the sheet I want and the cell I want my pivot table to go on to. I'm going to click OK, and I now can create a second pivot table to be on the same sheet. So this time I wanted to just be the product name and the extended price. So now I'm seeing every product, and then I'm seeing all the extended prices. So I can have two different pivot tables. So maybe I want to name this pivot table products. Pretty cool that we could do that. And what if I want to filter these pivot tables and I want to be able to filter them both at the same time? I can do that. I'm going to click on the first pivot table, go to the pivot table analyze tab, and I'm going to click insert slicer. And I'm going to say that I want to be filtering by country and salesperson. And I'm going to click OK. I get these two slicer windows giving me the unique values for each of these. Making a couple of changes that you've probably seen in a previous class, just so you could see. I'm going to make a couple of changes to these. But what I also want to do is to connect these slicers to both pivot tables. So I'm going to be on one of the pivot tables, and on the ribbon, I'm going to go to the slicer tab. On the left-hand side, I'm going to click report connections, and I'm going to tell it that I want to connect to the products pivot table. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click the salesperson slicer, go to the slicer tab, click report connections. I'm going to choose products again. I'm going to click OK. So both of these slicers are connected to both pivot tables. If I only want to see the orders for Canada, I can go to the country slicer, click Canada, and it just filtered both pivot tables at once. If I click USA, I just filtered both pivot tables at once. If I clicked a salesperson's name, I'm filtered by USA and by Janet. If I click Canada, I'm seeing Canada and Janet. So it's filtering both these pivot tables at the same time. Talk about an easy way to be able to manage your data. Unbelievable how quick and easy that is to do. Now, what if we want to have a chart that's going to go along with all of this? I'm going to go back to this first pivot table on the left. I'm going to go to the pivot table analyze tab. I'm going to click pivot chart. I'm going to choose that I want it to be a clustered column, click OK, and I'll automatically get a chart. That chart, as I filter, it's going to automatically update the chart and update both pivot tables at the same time. You can have multiple charts going on so that as people are filtering the data, it automatically can be filtering everything all at one time. I don't know if you've tried any of these features before, but I'm going to tell you, these are things that I use on a very, very regular basis. Okay. But there is a couple more topics that I want to get to before we run out of time because these classes go by so quickly for us. I'm going to go to the worksheet called Lookup. And what I'm going to want to do is look up employee information based on this list of employees. I want to be able to populate some data. I want to look up an employee ID number that I enter on A6. Then I want it to automatically find who the name is of that employee. So somebody calls up to the HR department and I'll say, what's your coworker ID number? I put in that ID number and it automatically can populate all the information by looking within my data range. You could do that with a couple of different lookup functions. The first one I'm going to do on B6 is I'm going to do what is called a V lookup. I'm going to do equal the letter V. I'm going to double click on V lookup. What it's looking for, if you look at the screen tip underneath, it wants to know, well, what is the value you want to look up? I want to look up whatever is in A6. So I'm going to click A6. I'm going to put in a comma to separate my arguments. It's looking for the table array, which basically means what's the range of cells it's going to find this data. I need to select A10 down through E49. A10 through E49 is the range of the information called the table array. I'm going to click comma again. Then I'm going to do a column index number, which means with this V lookup, which stands for vertical, which means columns, we have to count the columns across this table array to say which column has the value we want to get the answer to. Well, I want the name. So that's the second column because the first column was employee ID. The second column is the name. So I'm going to put in a 2. I'm going to control enter and it automatically will match the name of the person with the employee ID that I entered. So just so you could see, it found this Trevor Johnson. But I also wanted to find the region that Trevor is in. I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to tell it I wanted to look in the third column. I could do equal, I could do V, double click on V lookup. I would tell it I wanted to look up A6, comma. I wanted to find it in A1 all the way through, A1 across to E49. Then I put in a comma and I have to tell it the column index number again. So employee ID, name, then its region. So I have to put in a 3. Could you imagine how fun this would be if you had 200 columns going across and you want column 199? Not going to be very fun. I'll give you an alternative that is super easy that we don't have to use nested functions like index and match. I'm going to control enter and of course it will automatically find the region. I'm going to tell you I never do it like this anymore because we have a newer function which is called an XLOOKUP. I would prefer to use an XLOOKUP. No matter what it is that I'm having it look up, I could go back to those company orders and say, look up this invoice number and find the products that were sold or whatever the case would be, the salesperson. But what I want to do is take these columns, these column headings, I'm going to copy them and just paste them over here. So I pasted these different columns. I'm just going to spread each of these columns out a little bit here so you can see them a little bit better. And what I want to do is I don't want to have to do a separate formula for everything that I want it to find. I want to do all of them at one time. I want to find the name, the region, the department, and the earnings all at one time by looking up the employee ID number for me. And the way that I'm going to do that is by using a newer lookup function called an XLOOKUP. So I'm going to put in an employee ID number. I'm going to put in E001. I'm going to go to cell L5 and I'm going to do equal X. I'm going to double click on X lookup. It has similarities to the VLOOKUP that we did. First, it wants to know what is the lookup value. So I want to look up the employee ID number on K5. So I click K5, I put in a comma. It wants to know, well, where am I going to find that lookup value? It doesn't have to be the full table array, which, by the way, in a VLOOKUP or an HLOOKUP, you have to have the first column or the first row has to be your lookup value. In an X lookup, I could be looking up region. It doesn't care which column is my lookup. It doesn't have to be the first column. But in this case, it really is the first column. So I'm going to select all the cells in that first column. Then I'm going to do comma. And now it wants me to actually tell it what is the return array. Meaning which column. I don't have to count the columns across. I just tell it which column do I want to get the values from. So if I just wanted department, I could select that column. But I want name, region, department, and earnings. So I'm going to select B10 all the way down through E49. I want all of them. Then I'm going to do Control Enter. It automatically will populate the results of all of those in one formula. We don't have to go back and do a separate formula for each column that we need to look up of data. With an X lookup, it's going to do everything all at one time. Now, it has some other advantages to it, which you can find in your handout, but I got to tell you, something like that has saved me so much time and headache. This to me has been one of my favorite functions that they have added in years. And just so you know, as of today, there's over 500 different functions built into Excel. Over 500. Pretty crazy that we could do that. Now, of course, there's a lot of other things that we could be using in Excel that are related to kind of, managing our data. These are going to be your main functions that you can use. But I got to tell you, don't forget to use Copilot, because in a situation like this orders worksheet, if I need to get a suggestion of a formula column, I could right click on any cell. I could go to Copilot suggestions. Sorry, let me do that one more time here. Sorry about that. I could go to Copilot suggestions. Okay, why are you not giving me it's grayed out. I'm just going to go to chat with Copilot because it's not giving me the other options for whatever reason right now. I was using it just a little while ago, but anyway, I could tell it to analyze this data, create a pivot table, create a chart. I could be taking advantage of using Copilot if I have this license built into my 365, and there's even more coming with that with the built-in Copilot agent for Excel, which is called agent mode, but we'll get to that in another session. But anyway, just so you know, you could ask it. So I could say, what formulas, oops, I can't type and I can't spell today. Formulas, so that's okay. Would you suggest for this worksheet? Orders. I just type in what it is that I want Copilot to do for me, and it's going to automatically do it. So take advantage, if you have the Copilot license, take advantage of having it. Because boy, I got to tell you, there isn't a day that goes by that I'm not using these features. Because if I just need to find something within my data source, whatever the case might be, Copilot can do all that for me. So anyway, just so you could see, it came back with, you could do this calculation. Do you want to add it? Do I want to add this one instead, or do I want to add this one? It's giving you all kinds of suggestions based on your data set. So if I say I want to go to J2 and I wanted to actually create one of these formulas for me, all I have to do is click add to cell. Oh, I'm having an issue going on because I do this one all the time. I don't know why it's not working right now. I'm having a little bit of an issue, but just so you know, it would automatically create that formula on that cell. So I want you to be looking at the different icons that you find on the ribbon. I can't tell you enough about how many times I go to the View tab, because when I'm working in a worksheet or multiple worksheets, take advantage of those tools, that focus cell, the navigation, even using these window group features. These are fantastic tools that we have. So don't work as hard as you do. Let the computer do some of this work. You definitely want to be checking out the data tab as well, because there are some fantastic tools that we have here as well, especially this newer feature called Clean Data. Clean Data will take a look at your ranges of data and suggest if you have anything that needs to be fixed. I don't have anything that needs to be fixed on this one, so it's coming back telling me, sorry, we don't have anything. But just so you know that we have those, and it uses Copilot to do that data cleanup. But Matthew, I'm going to send it back to you and see if we had any other questions that came through from the group.